So this is quite exciting. The Microbit Foundation have announced the Microbit version 2, which makes a couple of important improvements, I guess, over the original version, which should be really advantageous for students in the things that they are looking to create and invent. So for full disclosure, the Microbit Foundation sent over some sample units of the new Microbit. They just asked for some feedback really on it. They didn't ask for any video coverage or anything favourable to be said about it. So what we've got here is really just my opinions on my initial hands-on with the devices and with some of the new features. So what we'll start with, we'll go through some of the differences with the new hardware and some of the specs so we can just see what's changed and what's new in these. So in terms of new features, the Microbit version 2 now has an onboard speaker, which is really cool because we've spent ages trying to fasten on or have them on breakout boards or do other stuff. So having a built-in speaker is fantastic. Also comes with a built-in microphone as well, which is really useful actually. For projects that you might normally use something like a sound sensor for. That's got an LED indicator on it as well to tell you when that's active. The logo on the device is now touch sensitive, so that actually becomes like another button really, so you can actually use it like a capacitive button on the top and touch that to make it do stuff. There's now built-in sleep and off mode, so that means that the board can actually be powered down while you've still got power connected to it. So another useful feature. It now has a discrete regulator built into it, so it can actually supply up to 200 milliamps of current to external accessories. So if anyone's ever tried to run servos on an original Microbit and had issues with jittery performance or just not turning at all, then this is going to be a huge advantage for this. So powering some of those accessories that just didn't quite work properly with the first one, just because it was not quite enough current coming out of it. Other little changes on it, so now the bottom edge is now notched. So this just makes it easier to connect the crocodile clip wires or to tie on if you're tying on things like conductive thread. There's now a power LED on the back, which in addition to the USB indicator, it basically tells you when it's actually powered on. So normally you would have the yellow light when you connect just USB to it, but now you get this little red LED that tells you just when there's power connected as well, which is useful to know if your program doesn't have anything on the screen. The antenna now is exposed on the back, so you can see that. In terms of other hardware specs and what's actually changed in the actual specs of the hardware, the CPU now is up to about 4 times the performance of the original version. It's got double the RAM and double the flash storage on it as well. This might not make a huge impact to your programs. It's very rare that a Microbit program will reach the limits of the hardware in terms of storage or RAM or space, but all useful things for building bigger projects. So we'll have a look at the board now and compare it with the other one so we can have a look at some of these changes a little closer up. So I'll try and bring it up on the visualizer here so you can see this clearly, I hope. Okay, hopefully that's showing up clearly on there. So we have an original Microbit on this side and the new version 2 on this side. So on the front of it, obviously you can see it's a slightly more matte finish now, as you can see the gloss on that one. But other things that are immediately obvious here, so the logo on the top now, because this is now, it's gold because this is a touch sensor now, so we can actually touch this and use this as an extra button on the top here. You'll also see here, it's quite difficult to see, but there's the microphone is just there. There's a tiny little microphone thing there and a little LED indicator to tell you when that's on, which is obviously a change over the original version. Along the bottom as well, you can see the notched connectors just here, just to make it a little easier to fasten things onto here as well. Turning the board over to the back. Okay, And on this side, what we can see, we've got the new speaker, obviously sitting right in the middle here, which is very obvious, the new antenna here for the radio. And you should be able to see, what else can we see on here? The microphone is actually there on this side, so we can see this side of it just here. And then there's a reset and what is now, as you see, it's just labeled reset here, reset and power. So you can actually use this as a power button to power it down or power it on again. So lots of little differences, but they're useful in terms of certain projects that you might be doing, which is what I want to show you next actually. So we'll have a look on the computer. I'll show you how MakeCode works with some of these new features and kind of explain how that will work with some of your older microbits as well, as we have a look through those. So inside MakeCode, what you will see now in here and what's going to appear differently for you. Inside the input, I guess that's probably one of the first places to start. You've got some new stuff. So we've got an on sound here. So we've got on quiet sound, on loud sound, which we can use for just sort of basic sound input. However, we've got down here sound level if we wanted to actually measure that in a little more depth, a little more detail from the microphone, which is cool. Also under here we have on logo pressed as well. So when we actually use the touch sensitive logo on the top, we can have that do something, which we can add in just here as well. So got another piece here as well. So actually coming over to this side, there is a piece here for setting the threshold for what loud means. So you can put this simply into your start block to say what kind of threshold you want to draw for this. So that's sort of a mid-range loudness. You could obviously make it really high, so it's a really high threshold for a loud sound if you might want to do. And then you've got an on logo release as well if you wanted to be able to use that for something. When it comes to actually downloading the code for this, obviously these things are not going to be present on a microbit version 1, but any projects you're going to download are going to work on both. But obviously these features are not going to be available on an original microbit. If you use the music blocks, then these will still work great. So what happens is, by default, when you play some sort of sound out of it, it'll come out of both by default. So it'll come out the built-in speaker, and it will also come out of pin 0, which was the behavior under the first microbit. You can, however, change, now if I can find it again, here we go. So onboard speaker, so we can set here to turn on or off the onboard speaker if we want to. So that will should in theory free up our pin 0, I believe. I'll need to do a little more testing on that one to work that one out. But I think if you enable this one to true, then it's going to turn off the sound out of pin 0, I believe. I will try that out at some point. So not too many changes in terms of things in here for now. So it's not going to impact if you've got microbit version 1s, which we've got absolutely tons of them, then it's not a problem at all. So these are just sort of extra bits within here, extra bits of code that you can use. It's not going to, nothing's going to change that would make our microbit version 1s unable to work anymore. They're still going to be absolutely fine. So what I thought with this one and some of these features, they would actually be kind of cool. So I only had time just to do a little quick project here with this, was to put this into the virtual pet. So this this was a microbit version 1 virtual pet that I did for a tutorial video a week or so back. And the way that this one, well, you can see on the back here how it's kind of wired up. So obviously this one's using an external button, but also it's got a speaker that's then been tied into the top just here, and a lot of wires with that. And its functionality is pretty basic. You can kind of feed it and it will beep and its health will go up and down like that. But what I thought that might be quite cool was to try and use some of the new version 2 features to make a new virtual pet. So this little guy, so he listens when you talk. We'll see, I don't know how well this will show up on the camera. So he's listening to me at the moment and he likes to sort of natter away whilst you talk. And when you stop, then he stops. So he's listening to you all the time here. And that kind of makes him happy when you do that. We can stroke his head by touching the touch sensor. Which is cool. We can feed him. Okay, and then we can have his birthday as well by pressing this one. And then we've got all the candles which we can blow out. Which works quite well, just using the microphone there to be able to pick those things up. But nice for little projects like this to be able to just use those features. Really, I mean, the microphone, I would say, is more of a sound sensor that we can use for obviously detecting audio, detecting things like air actually blowing over it and stuff like that as well. So it's really cool so far. We're going to be playing with this lots over the coming few weeks. We've got some students that are going to be starting to try and build some little projects with it as well, which is really exciting. Availability, I understand, is going to be November with the resellers. It's going to be shipping to them, so I guess it'll be arriving to schools sometime after that. But as I say, really exciting at the moment. And this is really just initial hands-on with it and kind of just what we've looked at so far with it.